There's still some things we need to take care of for these pages to be ready. First, we got a drop down right here that right now shows you only a link to all the speakers. Obviously, it would be nice to be able to show some of the other speakers. To take care of that, I'm going to go into my app.js file. Let's open that up. Make sure that I create a new locals variable that has a list of all the speakers. Now I'm going to call this one all speakers, and I need to get the data from the data file. So that is under the variable called data file, and then it's inside the speakers array. So remember, all this comes from this data.json document, and it has an array in there called speakers. All right, so once we have that, then let's go ahead and save this, and we can go into the views, open up my template, which has header.ejs, and that has the drop-down menu. And then right after this divider, I'm going to add some new AJS here. Remember that when we put something in app.locals, it's available to all of our routes as local variables. So it's the same thing as what happens when we pass information to the routes directly. So let's go ahead and just all speakers, and we'll use a for each statement here. And then we'll iterate through each one of the items, right? And then in here, we will output a list item, and inside here, we'll have an anchor tag. And the href will just go to the speakers route. And then I'm going to use the short name. So far we've been using an ID to sort of send people to an element of, element 0 of the speakers array, and so on and so forth. I'm going to be using the item short name as what I pass because it's a little bit better. I can specify which individual I want to deal with. So item short name here. And then as the label, I will use item and then just a regular name here. So now that we have that, we need to make sure that we have all this template data wrapped properly here. So percentage greater than sign here. And then I guess right there, let's go ahead and save this. And if we come back to our speakers, it might take a second to come up, but there it is. You can see the list. So now we need to fix our speaker route. So let's go ahead and close all this out. Open up routes. Let me go ahead and close some of these other sort of files that I've had here. So we'll go into our speakers route, and I'm going to change the page ID because there's actually a slightly different ID that I used in the CSS for these two different routes. So this one is actually called speaker list. And now I need to sort of create the second route. So right now, when we try to go to a speaker's data, we are just sort of using still ES6 and printing this out. So our route to get to the speaker's information is going to be almost exactly like what we've been doing up here. So I'm going to copy everything from this route, right? And in the route where I get the specific user's info, I'm going to just paste that in there, deleting what I had before, right? And this is almost going to be the same code, except of course, my page ID is going to be speakers detail. My title, I'll put speakers info here. And for the artwork, I'm going to pass along page photos, just like I did before, and page speakers. But how page speakers is generating is actually going to be different. So what I'll do is I'm just going to make this into an empty array right here. And so as we go through each of the speakers info, normally to create the entire list, what I'm doing is sort of aggregating all of the photos together. We're still going to do that, but right before that, we are just going to also take this page speakers array that's right now empty, and then just push each of the items that we get as we go through this list. So what this would do is actually just push all the data from the speakers into this array and all the photos. And we want to do this though only if something is true. So item short name. So if the name of the user that is coming to through the speaker ID parameter is equal to the short name, right? Then let's go ahead and do request params speaker ID. Then we're going to push the information. So what this will do is not create a list of speakers, but actually go through all the speakers and pull out the one that we have specified in the speaker ID, so that we get from the route, and compare it to the short name. So only the speaker that we have added to the URL will be passed, and also only the photos from that speaker will be pushed into this page photos array. And then we just pass that along to the page, and we should be mostly okay, but there's going to be an issue because we've changed this page ID now. So let's see, I think if we go to all speakers, we still get all the speakers except that the photos aren't appearing because we had a conditional that sort of showed different versions of the photos. But let's try going to one of these speakers now. So if we go to Lorenzo Garcia, you can see that we see just the information for that speaker and also just the artwork for that speaker. So that pixgrid.js file is actually what does this sort of overlay, and it shows the photo really big. So that's nice. But we need to I want more information than just a summary, because in the data file, and if we go to the data.json file, you'll see that I have just a summary, which is sort of a small version of the description of the user. And we also have this description, which is sort of a longer piece of text. So I need to go ahead and fix that. And we only need to go to, let's go ahead and hide public. We need to go to the views and then the partials. And then that's going to be in content, and it's called speakers list. So we need to make some changes here. First of all, the page ID is now speaker list, right? And so if it is a speaker list, then I can show this version of the image. Let's go ahead and save that and see if now when we go to the list, which is right here, oops, that took a second to reload. You can see that now the photo has a little bit of an indent, and that's because that's actually a style that's built into the page that assumes that you are in the page called speaker list. And if we go back home, everything looks fine. Still, though, when we now go to a specific speaker, we don't have the right information showing. Now, that was actually pretty easy to build that entire other route. So there isn't sort of a lot of difference, but we do have to tweak this a little bit further. So what we got to do here is sort of figure out what we're going to display, right? Whether it's the summary or it's all the other information. And then we also have to do a different version of this image tag here. So if this is the speaker detail, then we want speaker list image. And I don't want image circle. I want image responsive, which is a Bootstrap class that will take an image and make it fit the container as much as possible. I still want pull left. And this time I'm going to pull the version of the image that is bigger. So I don't need to put underscore TN here because I want the large version of the image. So if you look at the public folder, the images folder, under speakers, every speaker has two photos, a sort of thumbnail, and then also a high resolution version. And the difference is the thumbnails have underscore TN in them. Notice that I'm using the short name here instead of sort of an ID like I did before. And the short name plus either .jpeg or underscore TN.jpeg will give you the two versions of the photos. So that's cool. So that's what I'm doing here, just using still the short name, and then .jpeg instead of the tn.jpeg. So if we save that and we go to, actually, let's see if we need to refresh. Sometimes this takes a second to take over, but there it is. So you can see now we get the nice big version of the photo. So if you go to another speaker, you'll get the bigger photo. Even though this is the same viewer, the same partial, it's displaying the data differently depending on where we are and giving you sort of different versions of the information. So let's go back to Lorenzo because we still need to deal with the fact that, we have more than just this summary here. Down here, where we're saying if the page ID is not home, I want to do something else. So I'm going to make a copy of this one, and I'll make a copy of this one also. So I'm adding like an extra if statement here. So if this page ID is speaker list, then I want to output the summary. And then I'll just copy this one again and format it a little bit better. So otherwise, I want to output the description. And let's save that. And come back here, and now you can see that a longer description appears. There are some paragraph tags. So description actually has paragraph tags in them. And by default, whenever I output a variable, it's just going to assume that I want to output the text of the variable. If I want to actually parse the text as HTML, all I have to do is let's go back into Atom and put in, instead of a percentage or less than sign percentage equal, I can do a minus sign here. And what it will do is it'll actually parse the HTML for me. And notice that it's now returning a couple of paragraphs, which is something that you probably didn't know about with EJS. So that's the little hidden EJS trick. You can see now when I go here that it has the 2 paragraphs. So although most of what we did here was a review, practicing how to work with different routes, and then mastering what you can do with embeddable JavaScript and templates, it's going to help you get better at working with the Express framework.